Hi, my name's Rebecca, and this is my piano studio. I'm so glad that you're here today. One of the things that I do in my studio classroom and on this YouTube channel is teach something that I never learned from my piano teacher growing up, and maybe you didn't either. I always thought it was amazing when people could just sit down at the piano and play and make beautiful music with no music in front of them. I thought it was a skill that I just did not possess. But then when I realized that it was actually something that I just had not learned, I taught myself how to do that, and I'm here to teach you that today. One way that I use the piano is as kind of a form of therapy. When I've had a really particularly hard day, or I just want to relax, I'll sit down at the piano and just make some music, and like magic, that stress seems to disappear for a while. It kind of helps to have in your back pocket some really good chord progressions that you could grab, and then you can plug in whatever key that you are in the mood to play that day. So on this channel, we go through a whole bunch of different keys so that even beginners don't get stuck in the key of C major or A minor, which is a great key. They're both great keys to start in, but they're not the only keys out there. But we're going to go to a new key today, which is the key of E minor. So E minor is a relative minor to G major, and that means that there's only one black note. So honestly, it's not that much harder than playing in the key of C, but it's a new one for a lot of people. So I'm going to show you exactly what this chord progression is and the key to play it in. We're going to start really simply using hands alone and then playing some chords. And then we're going to put our hands together simply and then slowly increase the difficulty so you can make these things as imaginative and creative as you want. Thank you so much to those of you who have supported me and bought me a coffee. If that's something that you would like to do, I'm not going to discourage it. I am a Starbucks addict. So before we begin with this chord progression, let's talk about the key signature for the key of E minor. Now, before we get to E minor, let's actually talk about the major key that is the relative to E minor. And I'll tell you where the E minor comes from. So the major key is actually the key of G major. So we're going to play between G and G, and we're starting with a scale. I like to always begin with a scale because a scale will tell you, it tells your fingers which notes to play and which notes to skip. And it also gives your ear somewhere to go when you actually begin playing as well. So we're going to start in the key of G, which has one sharp. A sharp is one note up from the original note, whether that note is black or white. So in this case, we have one sharp, which is an F sharp. So instead of playing an F, we're going to play the note that's right to the right of it, which is this black one. So we'll skip the F and play this one. So you don't have to have the regular scale fingering for this. You can not worry about that. You can just use one finger and play the G major scale. F sharp, and then coming back down. Now that's the major key. But in order to find a minor key that is the relative, it's very simple. You start on the note of the major key, which in this case is G, and you're going to go to the left or down 3 half steps. A half step is just one note, whether it's black or white, the very next note down. So we're going to count to 3. So here's 1, 2, 3, and that leads us to E. E has the same key signature, which is one sharp, as the key of G major. So this time the only difference is that we play from E to E instead of from G to G. So the only note that we're going to skip is our F here. So here is the E minor natural scale. It's worth noting here that there are different kinds of minor scales, but this is the natural key signature, which is what we're using today, which is just the one sharp in the key of E minor. Now, using that key signature, we're going to make some triads on top of the key of E minor. So all a triad is are 3 notes that are stacked on top of one another. And I'm going to explain how to make the first one, but then we're going to keep the same pattern as we go all the way up the scale. This is important theory to understand this chord progression, so stick with me here before I get to the chord progression, which happens next. So to make our first tonic triad, or our number 1 chord in the key of E minor, we start on an E, and we're going to go up 3 notes. Okay, so we go 1, 2, 3. So we get to a G. So it's E, G. And then from our E, we're counting up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is B. So we have an E, a G, and a B. That is our first triad in the key of E minor. So our number 1 chord in the key of E minor is an E minor chord. Then we go up to our second note, which is an F sharp, but build a triad on top of that. We have F sharp, A, C, and that's a diminished chord. So an F sharp diminished is number 2. Number 3 is a G major chord. Number 4 is an A minor chord. Number 5 is a B minor chord, B, D, and F sharp. Number 6 is a C major. Number 7 is a D major, and then we're back to our E minor. The reason that building those chords was important is because now when I call out the number of the chord, you can figure out which triad that we're going to use. So for right now, we're going to stick with stacked chords, and we'll talk about inversions in a little bit. Okay, so first of all, we're starting with a 1 chord, which is our E minor. Then we're going to go to a 7 chord. So if we start on E and go up 7 notes and then do our triad, we can figure out which one that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're at a D major. So I'm going to do it down here. So we had our E minor, and now we're going down to a D major chord, which is D, F sharp, A. Our next note is a 5 chord. So if we start on E and we go up 5 notes and build a triad, that'll give us our chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a B. We build a triad on top of that, and it is B, D, F sharp. And that is a B minor. Okay, so far we have E minor, D major, and I'm going to go this way because it's closer, and we have a B minor. And then lastly, we have a 6 chord. A 6 chord is major in a minor key. So we're going to count up 6 from E minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that leads us to a C. We build a triad. That's a C major chord, C, E, and G. So here's the entire chord progression in triad stacked form. We start with an E minor, to a D major, to a B minor, to a C major. One more time, E minor, D major, B minor, C major. In your left hand, you have many options of what you can do. A lot of people get stuck with what exactly to do in the left hand. I'm going to give you 3 different options that you can do, and you can do any combination of these as you play this chord progression. So we start with a stacked chord. You can just stick with stacked chords, or you can do representative chords, which is what I like to do a lot of the time. So a representative chord is when you take 2 notes, which is the octave, to represent the chord. So the chord is E minor. We know that the notes are E, G, and B. But for right now, we're going to do just an octave of the E minor. And then we're going to take the 5th of the chord, which is not the G, it is the B, and put that down in the middle. We're going to hit the G in the right hand, so you don't have to worry about that being missing. So the next chord is a D major chord. So we're representing it with a D octave and an A in the middle. Now for the B minor, you can either do a representative chord down here, with a B with a F sharp in the middle, or you could do a stacked chord. So what I like to do for some reason, and I really don't know the reason why I do this, but for B minors, I like stacked chords. I don't know why, just something in my hand likes the stacked chord. And so sometimes I'll choose to do a regular stacked chord, and sometimes I will choose to do the octave with the F sharp in the middle. So you'll see me do both things. And again, you get to decide. Improvisation is all about you. You get to decide your choices of what you're going to do in your left and right hand, and nobody can tell you that you're wrong, which is what I love. All right, and then the last one is a C major chord, our stacked chord with C, E, and G. We're doing a representative chord of a C octave with a G in the middle. So the other choice is, with both the representative chord and the stacked chord, is you can arpeggiate them. Arpeggios simply mean that instead of doing a chord and playing all of the notes at the same time, you can play them individually, and you can do them in any order that you want. So that is a C chord, and that is a C chord, and that is a C chord. And also, this is a C chord. So any of those four choices would be perfect to do in your left hand. Right now, I want to do representative chords for all of these four chords in the key of E minor, and I'm going to arpeggiate them. And I'll use my pedals so that it all gets blurred together, which is a much better sound. So here's our E minor, D major, B minor, and C major. Okay? Or any combination of those things as you go along. Now, to start out with our right hand, we're going to put our right hand only in a 5-finger position along the scale. So we're going to do E, F sharp, G, A, and B. This is the first step to get used to playing with your left hand and your right hand at the same time. So to begin, I want you to play a representative chord in your left hand with the octave and the fifth in the middle as your first beat. And then with the next 3 beats, you're going to do any 3 notes in your right hand. This will just get you used to playing with both hands at the same time and moving your hands in chords along the way. So it will sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then end on the 1. So do that as many times as you need to feel comfortable with both hands at the same time. It's not wonderful yet, but that's okay because it is the step of getting comfortable with hands together. If that is super easy for you, then you can move on to the next step, but not until you're used to moving your hands around. I would try it with the representative octave. I just did an octave that time. I didn't do the fifth in the middle. I would try it with maybe the fifth in the middle, just the octave alone. And now let's do the same thing with the stacked chords also, because this also feels different in your hand than doing the representative chords. So let's do the same thing with the 1 beat in the left and the 3 beats in the right. The next step that I want you to try is now playing both hands at the same time for all of the beats, which will feel a little bit different. So this time I'm going to do representative chords with my left hand, and I'm going to play the same chord with my right hand, only I'm going to arpeggiate the chords. So for example, in the right hand, to start out, I'm going to play an E minor chord, and then arpeggiate it. Then play a D chord, arpeggiate it, B minor, arpeggiate it, and then C major. And the reason that I'm doing this is because it's the logical next step of putting hands together you'll be thinking of the chords in the left hand and in the right hand when you are improvising. It's not just the left hand. You're going to be also thinking about those same notes in the right hand. So let's give this a try. And on the E minor. So once that becomes easy for you, so you're really not stopping in between the changing of the chords, it is now time to make use of the right hand going between the octave. Inversions simply mean that you take a chord and you can play any of the notes in any order, and it still remains that chord. So this is the E minor chord that we talked about, E, G, and B. If we take the E off the bottom and put it at the top, that is also an E minor. If we take the G off the bottom and put that at the top, that is also an E minor, and then we're back to our stacked chord. So any one of those choices are valid when you are playing. Inversions can happen in the left hand or the right hand, but for now, because we're going to be doing our representative chords in the left, that's going to be our choice for today. It's great for a beginner to start that way. We're going to just worry about the inversions in the right hand. And again, remember, if you are not comfortable with any of the previous steps, make sure that you become comfortable there before you move on. We're always starting simple and then getting more complicated as we go along. So do not feel that you need to go with me all the way through all of these steps if you are not prepared to do so, because it'll just lead to frustration, and that's the last thing that we want. Okay, so we're going to begin with an E minor chord stacked. And then our next chord is a D major. A D major is D, F sharp, and A. So it makes sense to keep that chord in the root position or the stacked position because it's right here. We have our F sharp, we have our A, and we just have to move our D down. Okay, so we're going from a stacked E minor to a stacked D major. The next one, though, is a B minor. So if you remember, our B minor is B, D, and F sharp. If we go from here stacked down to here, it works. It's not that it doesn't work, but it would make more sense if all we do, we have a D and an F sharp already, if we just move this A to the B. That's the same exact notes, we just put the B on top. So that is an inversion of the B minor chord. So we have a root position E minor to a root position D major to an inversion of a B minor. And then our last chord is a C major, which is C, E, and G. We have several choices. We have the root position here, but I don't like that because this B that was at the top is so far away from this C that's at the bottom. I think it would make a lot more sense if we went to here with our E and our G and then just moved this up here. And then we can go right back to our E minor. So here's the entire thing with just a couple of inversions. So we have root position E minor to D to B minor to C, back to our E minor. So then after you've figured out what inversions that you're going to choose, and remember, this is not, what I'm showing you right now is not the correct way of doing it. This is simply my way that I'm choosing right now to do it, and you may choose something different, and that is okay. Remember that you can make musical decisions and it'll still be good. All right, so let's try the representative chords in the left with these inversions in the right to give us a new way of playing this. And I'm going to also arpeggiate them some too as well. We have two more steps, and this just makes it a little bit more musical, is where we add some passing tones. Passing tones mean that we're playing other notes that are not in the chord. Like, for example, if I were to play this A, it passed on by as I was making my way to this G. That's called a passing tone. So we're now adding some extra notes in our right hand to make some melodies in our E minor. So let's try this. I hope you enjoyed that lesson, and it seems like something that you will be able to do, which is the whole reason that I'm here. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner. If you are still struggling to learn how to read music, that's okay. Keep working on it. It can be a little hard at first and slow going, but it is worth it to be able to read music. However, at the same time, you can still use music in the way that I do, where you can sit down and just play for fun. I hope that this chord progression is something that you'll be able to use in the future. Make sure to check out my other videos about playing in all of the different keys with the Circle of Fifths playlist. I have it linked below. And let me know below if this is your first time ever improvising. Did it take you a long time to learn how to do this? Is this something that is new for you? I would love to hear what your experience is. Please put your comments down below. Thank you so much for all of your support. Make sure that you're commenting, subscribed, and all of that jazz. And I'll see you in the next video.